All right, so it looks like we are live. Hi, Arlo. I will introduce you, and then I'm going to do that really annoying thing that some people do and get you to introduce yourself. But just telling us a little bit more, because obviously there might be things that you want to add. So yeah, I'm very, very excited to be joined by Arlo, who is a freelance graphic designer and founder of Studio Arlo, where they offer shit hot branding and web design to queer, trans, and neurodivergent individuals and small businesses. They're also a director of Trans Pride Manchester and the founder of Not Your Business, a community for queer, trans, and neurodivergent creative freelancers. And when someone recommended us having this conversation, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, because I hadn't come across you before. And now I just think you're super cool. So thank you for being here. Would it be okay to just introduce yourself a little bit more if there's anything you want to add?
Sure. I mean, they're the first two things that I normally go off with. So exactly what you've just said. But a bit about me personally. I'm a trans non-binary individual. I'm autistic and also have ADHD. But my neurodivergence isn't like with an official diagnosis. I don't think that is necessary for me or a lot of people because there's lots of like gatekeeping around that. And then me personally, I love dogs, dinosaurs, and Disney. My core values are humor, humble, and honest. All the alliterations here. But yeah, as I said, I'm a graphic designer. I run Studio Arlo and I've been doing that for a year and a few months now. So I'm still very much a baby and still learning, but I'm excited. So yeah.
Yeah, what an introduction. I love that you also have like, I don't know if alliterated is a word, but that you have three things in their alliteration. That is very pleasing. And just to go back a step, I totally agree with you. I have, so I'm not diagnosed formally or identified formally as ADHD, and had the initial part of an assessment for autism. And the psychologist was like, I think we know what we're going to find. After you could have like one session, then you could pay to have more. And I also didn't like decide at that time to continue for various reasons. But yeah, I think that's important to mention because often lots of people feel like they can't identify as autistic or ADHD unless they have a formal diagnosis. And I have problems with that whole thing anyway. So yeah, just to say that. Yeah, and I guess I have so many questions, but I tried to send you some that could keep me on track with my enthusiasm. So I wondered if you'd be happy just to tell us a little bit about what you're doing or how you're doing right now, given the current climate, as a trans and autistic person. How are you doing?
I mean, let's not like sugarcoat what's going on in the world, especially in the UK. Like things are incredibly tough. And not just for me, but for my other trans and non-binary siblings and, other neurodivergent folks around as well. I think the recent Supreme Court ruling and the EHRC guidance have I've already seen an impact in them in my everyday life. So I've had an experience at a gym where people would just ignore, not coming to the machine next to me because I was wearing a Protect Trans Youth t-shirt with a big print on the back. And they were like, nah, not going to stand next to you. And I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. So that's how I've seen it affecting my daily life. And I hadn't kind of experienced that before. And then also I've had to email networking spaces and my gym be like, what are your trans inclusion policies? And I think having to be more vigilant on things that I haven't necessarily had to be on before is just very emotionally draining. And then so there's not just that kind of impact, there's my work is also, I'm seeing an impact on that as well, not necessarily through the type of work that I'm doing my clients because they are all queer, trans, and neurodivergent, which is, chef's kiss, but the
Yeah.
emotional toll of literally just the world is bleeding into my work life. But as I said, yeah, I'm incredibly lucky that all of my clients are incredibly understanding and they have that lived experience too. And so, making sure that I'm not having to push through a day where I'm like, I'm not feeling it. They're like, no, Arlo, you do you, that's fine. Whenever you're ready and ready to go is something that I have an incredible privilege with. But at the same time, I'm not necessarily just struggling. I'm trying to feel the feelings and be like, actually, no, the world is quite terrible at the moment, and not being naive to that. But I'm also trying to do what I can in the world. So I did a recent interview with ITV News up in Manchester speaking about the Supreme Court ruling. As you said, I'm also organising Trans Pride Manchester 2025, which will be our 3rd year. And then I'm very vocal on the internet, and I'm known for being the controversial one, even though it's not controversial, and we'll get onto that later. But I speak about things on the internet and social media. God, I sound like on the internet. I call things out when they need to be called out, and I also support others, my clients, others just in life. It is heavy, but I'm trying to do what I can with the resources and capacity and energy that I have whilst protecting myself. Sorry, I really went on there.
No, I love it. Please don't apologize. Yeah, and it's just, I mean, yes, so many things. And I think the benefit of working in your community, like supporting other trans and neurodivergent people and queer people, is great, because you have that like sense of solidarity, and also obviously you know that you're not going to get turned down for a job, for example, because you are trans or autistic. Um, and also it can mean that we're interfacing with like a lot of other people that are struggling at the same time. I've certainly noticed that in my one-to-one work as well, that it's tough right now, and so yeah, it's a challenge, kind of like, how do we keep ourselves afloat whilst also supporting other people and doing what we can to make change. Yeah, it can be a lot.
It is, but I think it's the whole solidarity thing, isn't it? We are all better together than we are pretending these things aren't affecting us, when
Yeah.
actually the majority of people it is affecting. I mean,
Mhm.
not just trans people now, like it's affecting like cis women. I mean, we knew that was going to happen all along, but I shan't get
Yeah,
into
surprise.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And also, in case anyone wasn't here for Adam's, like my conversation that I had with Adam earlier, they might be wondering, like, well, how are autistic people struggling? Like, why is that kind of part of the conversation? And obviously, that's part of our identities. Like, both of us share that. But I think also there's a lot of, as often happens, we've seen it with disabled people in terms of benefit cuts that have been, in the news a lot recently. So people are potentially being affected that way. But then also there's stuff going on in other places in the world, for example, in the US, with this idea of a register for autistic people. So like, just to bring in like why we're not just talking about the trans experience, we could obviously be talking about any kind of marginalized identity right now, including cis women in that. But it's just that these happen to be our identities, and we're kind of focusing on those, I guess.
And there's also
Um,
the like there's a massive intersection. Again could talk about this for days. There's a massive intersection between like the queer community, the trans community, and neurodivergence. Like
exactly.
at this point, it might as well just be a full circle.
Yeah.
Um, but I think there's so much intersectionality with lots of different identities, and as you said, it's not something to be necessarily ignored.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I'm kind of thinking then, what is helping you to get through these times? Obviously, you've mentioned like that sense of connection, that sense of solidarity, but is there anything like an idea, a thing, an activity that's helping you to get through?
So just special interests, Lego, dogs, dinosaurs, Disney. There we go.
Uh-huh.
Back in. But and this is going to sound quite big-headed or egotistical, but the people that I have and the members within the Not Your Business community have really been such a nice place to be,
Hmm.
because they get it, and it's not all just about business. I'm like, yeah, actually, the recent Supreme Court ruling, I'm like, how's everyone doing? Like, we're all checking in on one another because we truly get what it's like to have that lived experience and that identity, but also trying to run a business and juggling all of that additional strain and stress that comes with that. And so, like, if anyone from Not Your Business is listening, like, I'm grateful for like every single member that is in there, because I think ultimately it wouldn't be a community without the people that are in it. And I think, when those days that are feeling really heavy, just being able to be in that space, we're showing up for each other, we're being nice and nurturing, it's just really humbling. Again, core value. There we go.
Yes, love that. It's almost like you work in sort of marketing and branding.
Oh, it's all completely unintentional. That I'm like, oh, you said that earlier.
Just like weaving the things back in. Very good. Yeah. And also hearing you talk about not your business, it makes me think of people that might be listening to this who, I mean, we're incredibly lucky. We have, by the sounds of it, like both of us, really great community around us, both through the work we do and like from, just other like queer connections, and neurodivergent connections. But I'm also thinking about like people who don't have that and maybe are feeling like they're the only queer person they know or the only trans person they know or they're not out. Um, this is sort of like an off-piste question, but one, I guess, like who could join Not Your Business, and is there space? Who's it for? And also, are there any other recommendations that you would have in terms of helping people to like find the kinds of communities that we clearly like benefit massively from?
Sure, I'll do the plug first.
Yeah.
So Not Your Business is a community for queer, trans, and or neurodivergent freelancers, mixture of two or more or just one. That is absolutely fine. You don't have to be like super experienced. So we've got people there that have just taken the leap to go freelancing in the last month, right?
Mhm.
Because I truly believe that we as marginalized identities deserve to be able to go freelance or self-employed because the world isn't built for the way that typically like doesn't work for our brains, right? And a lot of the information on how to go self-employed or what you should do is gate kept by who I like to call Jerry's, cis white middle-aged men who hate their wife and kids, and that's why I'm also so open about all of my experience of being a freelancer and that journey on the internet, because there's
Mm.
enough money, there's enough clients, there's enough resources to go around, and ultimately, this sounds again very cliche, but you can't be what you can't see, right? Um,
Yes. Yeah.
and so I needed somebody like me growing up to look up to him like, oh, actually it is possible to not just be stuck in a 9 to 5. I've had workplace redundancies and transphobia at work, and I didn't want that for myself. There is also space in not your sorry, I went on an ADHD tangent
No, no,
then.
no. Love
Um,
it. Keep
there's
going.
there is space for members at Not Your Business. It's currently like quite small, less than 50. I don't anticipate it getting huge. That's not what I want, because then it gets overwhelming for us all and then it defeats the purpose of it, right? Um, and so yes, there is space for that, and you get your first month entirely free if that's useful for you to try before you buy. And then in terms of other spaces and community finding outside of kind of like a business sense, the internet can be a terrible place, but it can also be a really, really lovely place to be when you get yourself in the right spaces.
Mm.
Um, so whether that's reaching out to people on Instagram, am I showing my age? Instagram, or Facebook. TikTok is a bizarre one. I've not necessarily found identity community on TikTok. It's
Hmm.
something that I've been looking for. But Instagram, just messaging people like, "Hi, how are you?" Like, want to chat, but not in a weird, creepy way. Um, but then also there are lots of like prides, trans prides, queer groups around not just the UK, like the entire world, that are now running things outside of like just Pride Month and just Pride events. And so I would highly recommend like just reaching out to those places, because they will also in their local area have a bank of like here's a group or here's this thing. So in my local area, there's a queer coffee shop that do a monthly walk on a Sunday just to get people together. And I can recommend that to people because that's in my local area. I would
Hmm.
recommend that a lot.
Yeah, great. And I think just going back a step to what you were saying around if you can't see it, you can't be it, that we often talk about how important it is to have queer elders, for example, like no matter what age they are, but just have that experience, and trans elders. And but we don't really talk about that in a business sense. Or if we do, we're thinking about like networks in big corporates who, have like a LGBTQI plus panel or like a group, and actually seeing people, like I've been thinking about this a lot recently, and Kay Tempest is someone who I like look to as a person who the thing they wanted to do or like the ways in which they wanted to be didn't really exist in the same way, and
Mm.
so they kind of made it up
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
And I think there's that's really great, but like often we've had to do a lot of that, like figuring things out for ourselves, querying things, making them work. So the idea of being able to be in connection with other people and like look to, okay, well, how did you do this, or how did you figure that thing out, is really great, especially when a lot of us don't have that in like a biological family sense either.
And what makes me laugh is people look to me a lot of the time and go, Arlo, how did you do that? Or like, how have you managed to figure that out? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah.
And I think that's what is so not great about me. Not that's how I really get it. I'm perfect. What is like I truly don't gatekeep anything. And so if
Mm.
people go, how did you do that? And I'm like, I either A, don't know and it was a happy accident, B, I'm still figuring it out, or C, I'm trying this and I'm seeing if it works. Like I am very open with how I like navigating the world as a now business owner. Um, is just not not just like trans people need to do it, like that's not the burden that we should be carrying as marginalized identities. But if everybody was open, the world would be a much better place to be about like
Yeah.
the tips and tricks of the trade. They're not tips and tricks. Like
Hmm.
give advice, and it doesn't have to be behind a paywall either, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I mean, I think that's such a, it comes from essentially like from schooling and from capitalism, right? This idea that there's knowledge, and you, when you get to a certain level or you have a certain amount of money, you're allowed to access the knowledge. Until then, sorry, you can't come in. Um, and that is quite shit. So yeah, DIYing for the win, but then also like being able to share DIY tips with each other, not literally DIY. I mean, that also, but you know, about how to do things ourselves. Yeah. And I mean, I have like a lot of questions. So I feel like there's so many strands of this that are like all things I love to talk about. Um, okay, I'm just gonna have a breath. And actually, it makes me think of before we started, we had like a really brief chat where I was saying like about I'm going to say if I don't know something, and you said like you're exactly the same, and that there's a real, it can feel really vulnerable to just be like, I don't know. Good question. Uh, Especially as late identified neurodivergent people, we've often had to like wing it a lot of the time to get to the place where we are, you know, whatever that is in life. I don't mean like a certain level or anything, just literally like to still be alive. And a lot of that I remember from a young age was kind of being like, yeah, totally get it. Everything is like, got it all together, very organized. I know what's happening. And inside being like, oh my God, I have no idea. And so now it's quite liberating to be like, I don't know, sorry, or, you know, I'll help you figure it out, or I'll go and ask someone who does. And yeah, sorry, that was a long ramble, but maybe you have any thoughts about that?
I do. I do. Believe it or not, two ADHDs in a room together.
Great.
We can go very. I completely resonate with everything that you said. It's like words at school, and you're like, does everyone understand that, children?
Yeah.
Yes. Not a clue. I don't know. But the fear of being like, no, actually, I don't know. Because then obviously there's like peers and the peer pressure of being at school, which is always a terrible time when you are
Yeah.
like either closeted as like a queer person. I didn't know I was trans at school.
Hmm.
It all makes sense. I also didn't know that I was autistic at school. I'm being atted a little bit too much by myself here. But also, I wholeheartedly believe nobody has any idea what they're doing.
Hmm.
Maybe that was like a weird conspiracy theory. Whether you're like I'm talking about this in a business sense because that's what I typically do when I do this analogy, but like whether you're a day in, a month in, a year in, 10 years in, or like 100 would be bold if you're still working. But like no one knows exactly what they're doing 100% of the time about 100% of things because that's just unachievable. And I think the more open and honest we are, being like, I don't know, but I can find the person who does know, or I can learn because I want to. Again, the world would be a much better place to be. And ultimately, if you don't say like, "Oh, I don't know," and you pretend that you know everything, you're not human, right?
No.
And I think people, personally, professionally, whatever sense that you're looking at it, forget that we are just humans. This is our put this in like lights with the live, laugh, love sign. This is our first time living too. Like we're all still figuring it out, and like I've come to terms with the fact that like that's okay, that I don't know everything. I don't want to know everything. Actually, I don't want to be the person that everyone goes to. That's too much pressure.
Yeah.
Being open and just ultimately just being a human being and reminding people
Mm,
mistakes happen, life happens. I don't know, or I do know this. This is how I've done it. Might not work for you. We're all just human.
yeah.
I went
Yeah,
really
exactly.
profound, didn't I?
No, I love that. Speaking of profound, I've had this thought a lot recently that like, okay, I'm just going to pick people. So for example, like Beyonce or like Kay Tempest or, any other cool person, they didn't know that they were going to be Beyonce or Kay Tempest when they like started out. And I think often there's this, maybe it's just me, but this thought of like those people were always like that and they were always destined to like do things that they were passionate about and that they were good at, but like they also had to work and figure these things out too. And I don't know if I'm making sense, but there's something for me about like, no one, when you're born, no one's like, I name this child like whatever and they will be this. Like
Mhm.
everyone is figuring it out. Yeah, and maybe that's helpful in the sense that you can come to things whenever you come to them. You can, like you don't have to know it all now or even be doing the thing that you're passionate about right now. It can come in time, whether that's when you're 60, 110, if you've been in business 100 years.
I mean, big
Maybe going to
respect to
business at
you.
10 is a bit early, or any age.
Absolutely. I think ultimately Rome Rome wasn't. I'm coming out with all the all the phrases today. Rome wasn't built in a day. Like, and
Uh-huh.
this is what I was originally going to say. Like, success doesn't happen overnight. You think it does, and that's
Yeah.
what should happen to you. But again, over the last 12 months, just running Studio Arlo, I've had to try and really get rid of the shoulds. Like,
Hmm.
I don't. I left. I left full time employment because I don't want to work 9 to 5.
Yeah.
I don't want to reply to an email as soon as it comes in. I don't want to do all of these things because that's what we should do. Like, why am I
Hmm.
forcing myself down that little box? But I am my own boss. I can work whenever I want. I can work in my pants if I wanted to. Like, no one
Yeah.
would know unless I was on a call and stood up. Am I in my pants right now? Ooh.
Ooh, who knows? Now I'm like, oh, could you just go and get that Lego over there?
I am. I can confirm I am wearing trousers.
Good news. Okay. So now I'm like, it doesn't have to be good news. Like, wear whatever you want. I don't mind. Um, okay. Anyway, I feel like, as with classic ADHD connections, I feel like I could talk to you for a long time about loads of different things, but I'm also conscious that you have prepared some things for some cool questions I sent you. So let's ask those. Um, so yes, maybe this kind of links with what we've just been talking about, but do you have in mind a particular time when you made like a really bold choice? And how did that change you?
I think it was the leap to go self-employed.
Okay.
Um, for lots of different reasons. I think you're told, "Don't go self-employed, it's gonna be the riskiest thing you ever do."
Mm,
No, it's the least secure you'll ever be. I can hand on heart say I have never felt more secure than I have over the last 13, 14 months of being
wow.
self-employed.
Okay.
'Cause I'm not, yeah, as I've touched on already, I'm not living by other people's would, shoulds, expectations.
Hmm.
Because yeah, the world wasn't built for people like me to navigate the workplace, and I've had horrific experiences in workplaces, whether that's
Hmm.
so I came out as trans in a workplace because I interviewed for the role as my dead name and she her, and by the time I'd finished uni and started this role, I'd cut my hair, changed my name, changed my pronoun. Like,
Wow. Okay.
surprise, everyone!
It's me.
Um, I didn't necessarily have the best experience with that. I've also been made redundant. Like, I think I'm like 5 times since 2019.
Wow.
Had workplace transphobia in a massive, massive organisation, and I going self-employed, I can't make me redundant and I can't be transphobic to myself, right? Uh, I mean,
Yeah.
the bar is really quite low. Um, but that was one of the biggest choices and boldest choices I've made, especially with like, if my mum is listening, be like, no, don't do that. Are you not worried? Or like, there's a lot of pressure on you to make it work. I'm like, if it doesn't work, I always had this mentality of, if it doesn't work or things are a bit slow, I'll get myself back to M&S. Thoroughly enjoyed turkey team at Christmas time at M&S. I did, you know, and going with that mindset of, if it doesn't work out, I can say I've tried. But yeah, it's been absolutely life changing. That sounded also very like big, but like I would like to think that I've really come into who I am as an individual as well.
Mm,
And yeah, I'm known as the controversial one on LinkedIn, apparently by people that have never met me other than on LinkedIn. And they come up to me like, "Oh my God, are you that Arlo?" I'm like, "Oh, one of
wow.
you again. Yes, I guess I am." But by being vocal about trans rights, like my just like my lived experiences of just navigating the world as an individual, has allowed me to, yeah, come into who I am as a person, be more confident about
Mhm,
showing up in my fullest way that I am able to, because that has also then only allowed me to work with incredible people. I don't want to work with people that don't like that I use pronouns. I don't want to work with people that think, actually, Harry Potter's still the best thing since sliced bread. Not for me.
oh,
Sorry. Um, and so by being authentically me, and that word gets thrown around a lot, but I would
mm,
say that I wherever you find me, whether that's in person, on a video call, on the internet, wherever, I am the same amount of chaos. I don't sugarcoat anything. I don't use any corporate jargon that I feel is unnecessary. I am Arlo West, on or off screen, in or in person, wherever. I am still me, because also I've spent too long of my life masking, pretending to be
mm,
someone I'm not, whether that's transness or like neurodivergent. So I've gone like it or lump it at this point. But I would say the way that it's also paid off for me is that I never expected this to happen either. I've been nominated for 3 awards this year.
amazing.
So I've been nominated for 2 Startup UK awards, which I'll find out in 3 weeks whether I've won either of them. If not, it's great to do that in your first 12 months. And then I was also nominated for a National Diversity Award. Again, blows my mind that people are like, "Oh, Arlo, you do this thing,
Yeah,
get nominated." But I think that recognition as well isn't me like blowing my own trumpet, being I'm God's gift to earth. But it just confirms that choosing to go self-employed was the right choice to make for me.
yeah.
I really rambled.
No, I loved it. Oh, it was great. And I think that that's the tension, isn't it, between sort of when I'm thinking, so okay, two words that are really important for me and they're not alliteration, unfortunately, are like bold and gentleness. So I guess like they feel in the past, I would have thought like I could only be gentle and like couldn't necessarily be bold because like they didn't go together. But what you're describing there, I think, is like that taking that big decision and like going into business on your own and being yourself in all of the places is an incredibly bold move because it's really dangerous potentially, like, and not to, I don't want to stress you out, but like I think whereas before we might have thought um being vocal on the internet was, potentially you might get some trolls or, a bit risky. But actually, like with everything that's happening, it is becoming more and more dangerous to be ourselves. And there could be the temptation to just be like, fuck it, I'm like just gonna not then. But I don't know about for you, but for me, it feels like totally impossible. Like I've opened the box now, like I can't get back in it.
I was about to like do the exact same thing. Like I've stepped over the line and the
Yeah,
door's shut behind me now, and it's locked. I also don't know whether I would want to get back in at this.
right.
It is terrifying, and like the internet is a horrible place for all, not just
Yeah,
marginalised identities.
true.
And so when you get on the wrong side of the internet, it is. I just imagine Jerry living his life, writing these comments. I'm like, you know what, Jerry, you pop off if that's the worst thing that
Yeah.
if that's the thing that gets you going in the morning. A sad little life you lead, Jerry.
Mm,
But also like navigating like in real life, like just the trans messages that I wear at the gym is risky. And I have not feared for my safety, but I felt apprehensive, like what's going on, or even when I'm wearing them out and about, I'm like, am I going to be looked at funny if I go into this shop and buy a coffee or whatever? It is weird, but I don't want to go back because I'm not going to
Yeah.
stop being me just because other people think that people like us shouldn't exist in the world. Because spoiler, we've always existed. We're going to continue to
Yes.
exist. Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I did a powerlifting competition a few weeks ago, and it's very prescriptive, like what you have to wear. You can't have any sort of like political things.
Mhm.
And so the best I could do was wear like one rainbow sock and one trans flag sock. But even that, like, it felt quite risky going into such a highly gendered place. And I was
Mhm.
really like, do I want to do it? Would I rather just like not? But then I thought, fuck no, like, why should I not compete in something? Obviously, the categories I choose, like, I don't have a choice of which category I go into, but like, why should I not compete just because? I don't know. Yeah. And that did feel risky. Literally, I was just wearing socks. No, I was wearing other clothes, but I mean, like, I only was wearing, I was just wearing socks that were, yeah. So yeah, but like, it's kind of, it becomes like you don't really have a choice. It's just
Mhm.
who we are, and we're just living our lives. Yeah,
And it also feels like, well, if I also want to caveat, like, there are places in which are not safe for people like us to go, and I would never
yeah, yeah,
force
yeah,
myself or put myself in that positional situation. And safety is different for different people for lots of like intersectional
exactly.
identities that they have. But
Yeah.
for me, I'm aware I am white. I'm pretty able-bodied, and I'm starting to pass as a male, which is not me. But if I
Hmm.
get not misgendered incorrectly, then I'll take it. But if we stop wearing t-shirts, stop wearing socks because we want to, it feels like they've won and they don't deserve to win.
Mm,
We deserve to win, actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Suck on that, Jerry.
Yeah, Jerry.
Also, it does kind of make me think of Jerry Halliwell, so I need to like separate those two things because I feel like she would be quite cool on this stuff, but obviously I don't know.
Maybe Jerry
Um,
with a J.
yes, okay, yeah, now it's good. Yeah, nice. Okay, so next question then. What is something that seems common sense to you? You talked about yourself as being a controversial person on the internet. What seems like common sense to you, but others would consider a bold opinion? And it sounds like maybe lots of things. But I'm wondering if there's anything in particular that you picked.
Um, I I don't know how bold these are, but they seem it's common sense for folks like us. Is asking people their names, their chosen names, like what do you want to be addressed by? Whether that's like legally, you're like my dad's called Christopher, but he likes to be called Chris. Right? We give that grace to cis people, but we don't give it to
Yeah.
trans people. And also pronouns. Everyone should be disclosing their pronouns and access needs because it feels so basic, and just like the human decency thing to do, right? But somehow people still think it's too radical or too political in a lot of spaces.
Hmm.
Baffles me and it blows my mind that people still think that. And that's what is common sense to me, that like in my language, I'm like, hi, I'm Arlo, my pronouns are they, them, da da da. Here are my access needs. If you pick up the phone to me, I am not answering that. Absolutely not happening. Maybe that's also my age, and I'm the generation of if you phone me, not happening.
Yeah.
Um,
Same.
but when we take the time to ask everybody, like not just those who we assume to be queer, trans, or neurodivergent, we how do I phrase it? We create a culture of inclusion by default and not by exception, and it normalizes difference. And I say that in like normalizes and difference very not weighted, and it removes
Hmm.
burden from folks like us who are constantly expected to disclose and explain and advocate for ourselves, just to be able to participate and not be like misgendered or being told like,
Yeah.
I'm going to email you, or would a video call work instead of a phone call? And so I think what's also common sense is people forget that by being actually inclusive by default benefits literally everybody. We uncover experiences that neurotypical cis het people actually also find useful in their day-to-day lives, not just
Mm.
like professionally, but also personally. And so whether that's like having written resources in advance of a course. So like I loved when you sent me the questions in advance. I'm like, not an interview. Also, even if it is an interview, if I have the questions in advance, what benefit is that going to have on
Yeah.
me? And if you send them to everybody, everybody's winning. No one's
Hmm.
fluffing an answer and be like, nah, 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 and not saying anything in 500 words, right? Because everybody, neurotypical, neurodiverse or not, has different communication styles and things work for different people in different ways. Yeah, and the same goes for the pronouns thing. It reduces assumptions and awkwardness and stops misgendering for literally everybody. And it shouldn't be bold, but people apparently think that it is. Sorry, I
Yeah.
got examples then. I'll stir myself
Love it.
off.
No, no, no. I think, yeah, yes to all of that. And it just made me think of a couple of things. So one of them was around the Pope recently changing his name. Like he became Pope Leo, I think.
Yeah.
Um, and like all of a sudden, oh, it's Pope Leo. Like yesterday they were calling him something else, I think, Robert. And today not. But that was fine. So there's examples, like so many examples. I was also thinking about people who don't speak English as their first language. So it's not just about giving a heads up to people who might need more processing time for neurodivergent reasons, or people who might have anxiety or whatever. It also helps people who might need, from a language perspective, to prepare, or having sending the questions in advance. I mean, there's so many ways in which being inclusive benefits everyone. And that example of your dad, you wouldn't, if a cis man says what their name is, and then people are like, oh, for example, like my name's Robert, but you can call me Bob. People would just be like, oh, sure, Bob. Whereas like that just doesn't work for trans people often, does it? It's like, oh, it's okay, no, I'll just call you whatever. Or
Or
yeah, I
I
just
used to know you as, also no. And it's the same, like the Pope analogy. Yes, when it came out, I was like, are we really going there right now? And like, when people get married,
yeah, yeah,
give us we're not asking for a lot. If I wanted to be called Jerry tomorrow and I changed my name, even if it was just a nickname, call me Jerry. What bearing does it have on your life?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I was saying to Adam earlier, I'm conscious not to mention people who I don't really want to like bring into the podcast, a bit like, and then I was going to say a Harry Potter reference. I hate Harry Potter, but also because, or like Macbeth, that you're not supposed to say that because it's bad luck.
Oops.
I just said it. Oh no, but what I was going to say was like, there's a very famous billionaire in the world who has named his children like quite unusual names, and that they're the names. Like that's what people will be expected to call them. Obviously, the young people might decide they want to have different names or, have shortenings or whatever. But like again, it's oh, you can't use that. That's a made up name, or you can't do that because that doesn't align with your gender. Like blah blah blah. So yeah, it doesn't follow any kind of logic, I think, other than just like transphobia. That's it.
Exactly. And like life also doesn't follow logic. As I
Hmm.
said, no one knows what they're doing. And also, if I wanted to be called Book tomorrow, so what?
Yeah.
Literally, so what?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Now my brain's thinking about. I used to teach English as a second language or as an additional language to people who would come to the UK and stay here for a few months, and then they would like go home and go to uni or whatever. And I used to teach a group of Thai kids, and they actually chose English names to use. Apparently, that's like quite a common thing in Thai culture for people to have anglicized names, and they were literally things like boat and like the coolest names, but they were just words that the young people liked. And then that's what they were known as. So yeah, it was cool. Um, okay. So thinking about that then, that your like bold opinion isn't even that bold.
To people like us.
Right. But clearly is to lots of other people. I guess, how do you manage that? Like having bold opinions, supposedly, but being in, obviously it sounds like you're in spaces a lot of the time with people who get it, like your clients get it, maybe people that you're in other sort of networking connections with. But yeah, like how I don't know, is there any other ways in which you support yourself when you're maybe like interfacing, say like doing a video interview with ITV, or because that takes a lot out of you, doesn't it? It can be intense.
It, it it did blindside me. The questions that I was sent in advance were not the questions that were asked for ITV.
Wow, okay.
That put put the me in autistic, right? I was like, this is not the plan. I'm blindsided now. I'm
Uh-huh.
talking about trans people and like my lived experiences was a lot, but I think I try and practice what I preach with my clients a lot as well. So I'm also helping a lot of people with social media and their strategy, their content that they post, and I'm
Hmm.
a firm believer of what I call a go no go list. What are you comfortable talking about online? What are you not comfortable talking about online? And there was a client of mine when the assisted dying bill was being discussed. And she's got lived experiences. She's a disabled person, and she was like, I feel like people are looking at me on the internet to talk about this thing, but I'm not ready. I don't want to, but people are waiting for me. And I'm like, let them wait. If you are not ready, you do
Mm,
not put yourself, you don't have to even talk about it ever on the internet if you don't want to. And so she just didn't. She was like, okay, if I want to post, whether that's now, in a year's time, 10 years time, or never, I'm going to do it because I want to, not because it's topical at the time. So that's one thing that I try and embody in my own controversy on LinkedIn. Um, but also being it's horrible to say, but being prepared to be on the wrong side of the internet, which comes
hmm
hand in hand with the timing. If you are posting something and you are like, would I be ready for Jerry to come back and say something really horrible?
mm,
Oh, I'm not emotionally ready or prepared for that. You probably shouldn't be posting it at that time. So if you write the post, then wait 2 months and you're ready to potentially deal with the backlash of Jerry's. Sorry, I don't know any Jerry's. Maybe that's why I've chosen Jerry. Um, but like, that's something that I'm also really
hmm
considering when I'm on the internet now
Yeah,
as well.
yeah. So I guess like having boundaries around what does feel good and doesn't feel good to talk about, and being prepared that whatever you talk about could blow up into like, yeah,
I mean,
not
touch wood, it
great areas.
on LinkedIn, I've only ever had to tell one man to fuck off
Okay.
because I'm my own boss. I wasn't going to fire myself for telling someone to fuck off because he said something
Uh-huh.
really horrible and was doing the trans debate.
Okay.
I'm like, pop off, Steve.
hmm
See ya, XOXO. I just went, okay, and you can like politely like fuck off and leave me alone now. He left
hmm
me alone. These men just need some authority in their lives, I'm telling you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that sounds really just really important to have those boundaries. Um, and I guess with that in mind, then I'm wondering if there's anything else that you want to say or that would be good for us to talk about before we finish up.
The world, okay, the world just needs to be more Paddington. That is the mantra that I live
Oh,
by. I read a Paddington quote every single day, and the world needs to just be more Paddington. Personally, professionally, it would just be a better place if we all just acted a bit more Paddington. That's all I'm gonna leave it on, really.
that's very cute. What do you like about Paddington in particular?
What is there not to like?
Oh,
Right? Um, I even liked Paddington. I love Paddington so much. I don't do spreads in the sandwiches. I don't really do condiments. I've made myself like marmalade sandwiches
oh,
just for Paddington. And he also used to be my client, which is a big flex of mine.
oh
Uh,
my gosh, that's so cool.
I've always loved Paddington, always have done. He's kind, he's got the best intentions. And for me, intention in life,
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yay. Now imagining like you walking around with little marmalade sandwiches in your pockets.
well, I do have I do have a little wicker basket from Fortnum and Mason when
Cute.
Pricing in Peru came out.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's very sweet. Um, and very wholesome as well. Yay. Okay, so if people are wanting to connect with you, obviously I'll share links in the show notes and on the YouTube link. But if there's anything that you want to plug, obviously you talked a little bit about some of the work you do. But yeah, where can people find you? How can people work with you if they want more Arlo in their lives?
Sure. So where you can find me is probably playing with Rue. But when I'm not playing with Rue, you will find me on Instagram and TikTok at studioarlo.png because
Hmm.
some silly Billy took just Studio Arlo. My website is studioarlo.co.uk. I'm just Arlo West on LinkedIn. And then if you are intrigued about Not Your Business, the website for that is notyourbusiness.co.uk. My email address is the same. So arlo at studioarlo.co.uk is where you can find me for anything. It's all pretty self-explanatory. Just search Studio Arlo and hopefully I've done a good job at SEO, which is not my job, but it is now.
Yeah, your job is everything,
Yep.
all the things. Great. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me. It's been so great to chat to you. And yeah, I feel like there was just loads more things that we could have talked about. So yeah, thanks for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, we'll schedule in a day next time to go on
Yeah,
rabbit.
that would be so fun. And eat marmalade sandwiches as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, although they have to be gluten free. I'm sorry. Well, my ones at least. Okay. All right. Okay. So I'm just going to stop the recording.